information. We really appreciate you, and we know that that really does make a difference when it comes to educating ourselves, being able to help our youth, and just helping set them on a better path. So let's get right into this. All right. So, like I said, I am with Not My Kid. Our company is a nonprofit organization. We focus on youth mental health and well being. And our mission is to ensure every kid thrives by inspiring positive life choices. And we do that by offering the best in prevention and behavioral health services, as well as protecting youth mental health. So we want to give the supplies, the resources, the knowledge, whatever we can, to make sure that kids are making the best choices for themselves. And we really do want to leverage the power of the space. Oops, sorry, I laid back. All right, and how do we make a difference? So we educate to build resiliency, we inspire hope for the future, and we grow connection and communication. So those are the things that we really want to make sure that we're building up, those skills, so that we're helping people be stronger, know how to make choices, know how to stand up for themselves, and just really make sure that they can make the best choices for themselves, because they know all the options. When we talk about prevention, we use the upstream model. So when we're thinking about what is an upstream model, we want to think that as we're doing prevention, all the challenges and the adversities and the tough things that our youth are facing is like a big river. And so we want to stop our youth from falling into the deep end, not being able to get out, not knowing how to swim, what the resources are, or ended up drowning. So we want to catch them before they fall into the deepest part of the river. So we want to catch them upstream while the river is still shallow. And ultimately, our main goal would be for them to never fall into the river in the first place. So when we say we want to go upstream, that is what we really mean. We go upstream for true prevention. All right, the approach that we take whenever we are doing any sort of prevention, early intervention, or behavioral health services is that we have a safety first approach. So we are trauma informed, and we just want to make sure that everyone who comes in gets information from us knows that we know that stuff is hard sometimes, and the things that we talk about and things that we're educating about can be difficult. So there is going to be some sensitive material, some sensitive things that might be said. So just know that if you feel like you can't hear this right now, like this is too much for you, and it's triggering something in you that you need to take a break, please feel free to hop off the call. That is totally all right. We want to practice radical presence. So when I say radical presence, what I mean is we want to get rid of any preconceived notions or any judgments that we have, especially when it comes to substance use. Just get the information and figure out how we can best utilize that as we go forward. Take space and make space is something that I think is really important. We know that everyone has a voice, everyone has a perspective, and all the things that we do in our lives, they matter. So sometimes we need to take that space, come out there, say, hey, this is what has happened to me, this is what I've experienced, this is what I've done, so that we can make space for others to get resources, learn from someone else, build resiliency. So we really do focus on that, taking space and making space. And we also want to focus on self-care and collective care, so knowing how to take care of yourselves and inspiring others around you to do the same for themselves, as well as just knowing what resources are available. My name is Danielle Flowers. I am a program coordinator. So my job is to go out into the community, make connections, and help get presentations just like this one into schools. We talk to youth, we talk to parents, we talk to staff and faculty. Whoever is interested in getting the information, the knowledge, and the resources, I want to make sure that they're connected to us, and that we get them that stuff. So this is really important to me that we create safety for our youth through substance use prevention and awareness. That's my contact info there at the bottom. So if you ever need me, please feel free to shoot me an email at dflowers@notmykid.org. We are research based, so I just want to make that clear that we're not just making this stuff up. Like, this is real. These are real facts, real statistics, and real things that are actually happening around the entire nation, but specifically in Arizona. So I do want to highlight that we do get our information from the Arizona Youth Survey, the Arizona Department of Public Health, and Partnership to End Addiction. So Partnership to End Addiction is a really great partnership that we have. We're collaborating with them on a lot of webinars and professional development. So if you're interested in something like that, please check us out. Like I said, if you are interested in knowing more about that, you can shoot me an email or you can check out our website to be involved in the next professional development webinars. Okay, so let's talk about what are we going to be doing today? What are our goals and what do we hope is the outcome of this? So one, we want to understand why teens use substances. We want to learn which substances are most accessible to teens. We want to identify risk factors and signs of use. We want to learn strategies to build resiliency in youth. And lastly, we want to feel ready to respond to a youth in need. So let's get into it. Understanding why teens use substances. I think it's really important for us to know that any behavior is going to have an underlying cause and a reason for why it's occurring. So when we want to ask teens, why are they using substances? These are the main responses that we've gotten. And this is from the Arizona Youth Survey, which was done back in 2022. So 43% of youth that answered this survey said that they use substances to have fun, and 36% that they said that they do it to feel good. So what we're seeing is, like, in the media, in all sorts of things, they're going to see drug use portrayed as a means of having fun, of enjoying yourselves, of partying. And what we need to do as adults and as parents and as people in these young people's lives is to demonstrate that there are ways to have fun and there are ways to feel good that do not utilize substances and that are healthier for you. So we really need to model the behavior that we want to see in our youth. We need to encourage them to do things that are fun and make them feel good that are not substances. So if they are into music, if they like to dance, if they like to beatbox or swim or whatever it is that they are interested in doing, we really just want to make sure that they have the opportunity to do that, and that we're hyping them up and making sure we know, hey, that's awesome that you're really into that, and that is a way that you have fun, and that's a way that makes you feel good. We really just want to encourage them to be doing those behaviors instead of using substances to try to achieve the same result. We look at the other reasons that a youth might be using substances. So 30% say that they're feeling sad. 36 say it's because of stress from school. 30% say stress from family, and 23% say stress from their peers. So we just need to know that in a lot of these cases where youth are turning to substances, it is to deal with an overwhelming amount of stress or pressure, anxiety or sadness, depression that might come up because of things that they're doing. I know that as family members, as parents, we really want the best for our kids. We want them to do the best that they possibly can. So we're encouraging them to do well in school and take on sports and take on whatever other things are in their lives. But we also need to understand that those things can also be stressful. So just making sure that we level with our teens and we say, hey, I want the absolute best for you. And let's figure out a way that we can do that is achievable, that is not too overwhelming and not too stressful for you. Because it's really hard being a teen. I think we were all teens once, so we all know how it was, trying to fit in with other people, trying to find our place in the world while also trying to stay on top of grades and school and worrying about the future and worrying about friends. And it's just a lot and it can be really overwhelming. And so I think the best thing that we can do is just have open, honest conversations with our youth about how they're feeling, how they're doing, what's going on in their lives, and what can we do to best support them. Let's talk about reasons why teens don't use substances. So 71% of teens who answered in this survey said that they don't use substances because of parental disapproval. So that's really important. Just knowing the fact that their parents do not condone the use of substances and they look down on it, they don't want to do it, that helps teens understand that they shouldn't be doing it either. So just make it very clear from the beginning where your stance is on this, and what would happen if they were to do those substances. So make sure that they know about consequences. Also, make sure they know what substances actually do to their bodies, because 70% of those teens who answered said that they don't do substances because it would harm their body. So they have an understanding of the harm that substances can do to their brain, to their body, to their futures. And so we want to make it really clear to them what would happen if you were to use substances. Like, it's not all feel good and good times. Like, there are some negative consequences that are associated with that, and so just making that very clear to them, and so that they understand, hey, I don't want to do this. Like, this could cause something difficult for me in the future. This could damage my brain or hurt me when I'm trying to be successful. So that really just comes from companies and organizations like Not My Kid, who are going out into the communities and educating youth on these things. But more importantly, it comes from parents having these conversations, these difficult conversations with their youth, and really laying it out for them, and being honest. Like, honesty really will take you a long way when it comes to having those conversations. Back to the percentages here. So 55% would not do substances because they would lose their privilege. So that's what I'm saying earlier, is when we're having these conversations, that they understand that your boundaries and that there are consequences. They don't want to lose out on stuff that they like to do and want to be doing more of. So just make sure that they know, hey, if I were to catch you, vaping or something like that, you're not going to be able to use your PlayStation or play Fortnite with your friends for whatever amount of time it is. Just let them know, like, hey, you can't do these things and expect no consequences. So back to the statistics: 55% don't do it because it is illegal, and 46% think they would get a bad reputation. So just understanding the actual legal repercussions and how people might view you if you were to use substances is also a reason that youth don't do them. So, like I said earlier, just having honest conversations, talking about it, talking through it, asking, why do you think people do substances, and seeing kind of their perspective can really help you as you're trying to navigate a conversation with them about why they shouldn't be doing substances. Let's talk about the teen brain. So the brain is an amazing, amazing organ. It is the powerhouse of our entire body. Like, everything that we are is encompassed within our brain. And so it's really important that we understand the way that it develops. If you know this, you can drop it in the chat. But what is the age that the brain stops developing? Take a second here for answers. Sweet. So I think that a lot of the times we think that your brain is just done being developed as soon as you turn 18, because we consider that to be an adult. But actually, the teen brain does not stop developing until the age of about 25. So you're midway into your 20s before your brain is fully ready to take on everything that it's got to do as you navigate the world. So let's talk about the frontal lobe. So that area is going to be under construction the longest, and it's actually the last part to develop. And the frontal lobe is where your decision making center is. So this is the part of your brain that lets you know whether something is good or bad or not. It tells you whether something is a good or a bad idea. So as your brain is developing, you're going to do things that are not necessarily a great idea, because your brain hasn't developed enough for you to know that right off the bat. So the teen brain is actually wired to experience feelings stronger than adults. So when we see our youth, blowing up about something, or getting super, super hype about something that you don't think is that cool, or whatever it is, just understand that that's because their brain is developing. They're literally wired to feel things that way, and it will taper off as they get older. So the intense emotions that you are seeing them show is actually a normal sign of brain growth. So just, I think, have a little bit of grace for your youth, the youth in your lives, as we know their brains are developing. We know that they don't have it all figured out yet. They don't know everything yet. And so we can't really like obviously we have to teach them the lessons. So if they do something that's bad, we have to teach them, hey, that's bad, and this is why it's bad. But we it's really hard when we say you should have known better, because even if they knew better, it's hard for them as their brains are developing. So I would say have grace, understand that, and really spell it out, make it clear when you're talking to them so that they do know and they can grow. There we go. All right. So the feel good chemical is called dopamine. So that is released in your brain when your brain wants you to feel good. It wants you to know that you're being rewarded, and especially when there's new experiences happening. So that dopamine is going to be released, and we call that the feel good or the happy one. So, substances can actually rewire your brain to form addiction pathways. So, the substances they flow through your body, they hit your brain releases the dopamine, and it's like, oh, wow, this is awesome. This is so good. I'm feeling really great right now. And then eventually it's going to come to a point where your brain is going to not feel as good anymore until you are using substances. And then it's going to lead to you need more and more substances to reach that same amount of feeling. And that is what we call an addiction. So, something that I also want to point out here is we got to give our teens a little bit of slack, and we got to hype them up a little bit when it comes to their ability to deal with problems that we consider to be too adult or too difficult. So, when teens are calm, they can solve almost every problem that an adult could solve. So, just talk to them, be honest with them, teach them how to regulate themselves, come down from when they're feeling dysregulated and they're hyper emotional. So it's like, hey, let's calm down. Let's think about this clearly. Let's take it slowly. Let's make decisions, because we're not giving them enough credit for what they can actually do, and we're just assuming that they can't problem solve on their own. And really, we know that they can. So give them some grace, know that their brain isn't fully developed, and give them some credit, because know that they are more developed than we give them credit for sometimes. We can't just assume that they don't know everything just because they're younger than us. All right, so let's move on to which substances are most accessible to teens. So the big three we're going to talk about. Oh, let's go back here. Alcohol, vaping, nicotine, and THC, and then opioids, including fentanyl and counterfeit pills. So let's talk about some common misconceptions when it comes to drinking. So you might hear a lot of people say, oh, most teens drink, or it's a rite of passage, or oh, I would rather they drink at home than, at some party or sneak it into some club or with people I don't trust, or whatever it is. But these are all misconceptions. We're going to learn a little bit later about the misconception about most teens drinking. It's really not true. Most teens are not drinking. And when it comes to being a rite of passage, it isn't, and it doesn't have to be, because they can wait until they're 21 and do their rite of passage then. And then saying that you would rather they drink with you at home, where you can watch them and supervise them, it doesn't actually stop any problems from happening in the future. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. Okay, so in 2019, the Drug Abuse.gov did a survey on youth asking them, do they drink? And only about 9.4% reported that they drank alcohol in the past month. So the consumption of alcohol by teens is not nearly as high as we think it is, or as we've been told. So if your teen is trying to say, oh, all my friends do it and everyone does it, and everybody's doing it, so I should be able to do it. Actually, everybody's not doing it. So that's not really a valid reason to allow them to drink, or to dismiss it as not that big of a deal. Sorry, my computer is not wanting to work with me today. Okay, so let's talk about teens that are drinking before the age of 15. So they are 5 times more likely to struggle with an addiction. So when we're saying that we're going to, we'll drink with them, we'll monitor them, we'll make sure that everything's okay, actually, it's not really benefiting them, because the younger age at which you start drinking, the more you're going to have a higher chance to struggle with addiction. So we call that the critical period. And adolescence is the critical period for addiction risk. So something that I think is really interesting is when we look at addictions and we ask, when was your first use? People whose first use were before the age of 18 actually had a 1 in 4 chance of developing an addiction, versus people whose first use is after age 21 had a 1 in 25 chance of developing addiction. So the chance of developing addiction is greatly decreased the later and later that we push off and using the substances. And that is for alcohol, that is for drugs, that is for any substance in general. The longer that we can delay, the better it will be for our youth to not have as high of a chance of developing a disorder or an addiction related to the substances. There we go. Okay, so like I said on that last slide, the part about supervising them isn't the part that matters. Like, yeah, you can make sure that they're safe in the moment. You can make sure, if they get sick, that you're helping them out, make sure that they're drinking water and all that stuff. So, they don't have a hangover in the morning. But realistically, the part that matters the most is the age at which they're drinking. We just talked about those statistics about the the chance of developing an addiction is based mostly on the age at which you have your first use. So, drinking can cause depression, anxiety, violence, or impulsive behaviors. And we don't want that happening in our youth, especially as their brains are not fully developed and they don't really have all the skills yet in order to cope with depression, anxiety, or those violent or impulsive behaviors. So, let's talk about vapes. So nicotine vapes, those are very popular. You've probably seen them. They're brightly colored. They look pretty. They smell pretty. They make them super discreet so that you can take them anywhere. They fit in your pocket. They're really small and they're pretty affordable. So they're only about $5 to $20. You can get these in a shop. A lot of them are disposable. Yeah, most of them I would say are disposable. I'm not sure if in the nicotine vapes there are any that are refillable, but since they're so cheap, I would say that they probably just toss the little container and buy a new one. So you go into a shop, you just let them know, hey, I want a vape, and they will grab one for you. They have really fancy, fun flavors like lemon mint and blue raz ice. So they make them smell good and taste good, and they really do market to our youth. Let's talk about THC vapes. So these are slightly less affordable, but still pretty affordable. So they're about $25 to $50. They are very accessible. You can get those in shops or from friends who might have some, and will just you can sell it to them, in the bathroom or, in the locker room, wherever it is, wherever you can get a little bit of privacy in order to make that exchange. They are usually pretty small, so they are easy to hide. And yeah, it's a similar issue as with these THC vapes because the flavors of them are made to be delicious, like ice cream cake and strawberry and whatever it is that they want to market to youth because they like sweet things. They like when things are masking what might otherwise be not so good flavor. So these are very important to keep an eye out for them because they are truly marketing directly to our youth, trying to get them to be the ones to buy it. This is the Highlight vape, which I recently discovered and thought it was just so wild how realistic it looks to just a regular highlighter. And this is what I say. This is what I mean when I say that they're trying to get it to youth. So they're saying, hey, you could easily hide this highlighter with you at school. Nobody's going to think it's anything but a highlighter. And so I feel like the new creative designs that are inconspicuous are really to our youth to make them feel like, hey, nobody's going to know that you have this thing because it just looks like a regular highlighter. So keeping that in mind, the flavors, the bright colors, the packaging, everything about it is to make it more enticing to young people. Okay, let's talk about the nicotine pouches. So these are fairly new. I've seen them coming about probably in about the last year. They've come to be more popular. So these are very affordable. They are only about $2 to $5 per can. So it comes a little can and it's got these little tiny pouches in them. And so what you do is you put them either in your cheek or in your gums, under your tongue, wherever it is easiest for you to hold it and hide it. That's where you place it. It releases. Sorry, I'll go back. My computer is doing its own thing today. There we go. So it releases the nicotine, and it will. People think that this is better for you because it doesn't contain any tobacco, but realistically, it's not good for you. It's still nicotine. Nicotine is highly addictive. And once you're using these nicotine pouches and you've developed an addiction to nicotine, what is the next step that you're going to take? Well, you might go to nicotine vapes and you might start smoking cigarettes because, as we know, the more that you ingest something that is addictive, the more that you're going to require it. So at some point, you're going to be going through packs and packs and packs of these little cans a day until you move on to vapes or whatever other is the next thing that can help you fuel the need for your nicotine. So it's highly addictive. It's not a chemical that you want to put in your body. It's not a chemical that we want in our youth's bodies. And so we really have to make it clear to them that, like, just because it's not a tobacco and you're not smoking it necessarily doesn't mean that it's a healthier thing for you. Okay, so let's talk about xylazine. So xylazine is usually found in combination with fentanyl. So we're going to talk a little bit about fentanyl later on, but it is one of the leading causes of teen overdose deaths. And that is because xylazine does not respond to Narcan or naloxone. So those are the drugs that you use when someone is experiencing an opioid overdose. And the xylazine is a horse tranquilizer. So you're going to hear it called Trink dope, the zombie drug, or sleep cut. It's fairly affordable, so you can get a kilo for either between $6 to $20. And you can buy this on the internet. You can buy this from friends. You can use social media to order it. So it's easy to hide, it's easy to use, and it is addictive. And it is very dangerous because, like I said, it doesn't respond well to Narcan or naloxone. So if someone's having an overdose, their chances of survival are lessened because the main drugs that the main thing that everyone has access to, Narcan or naloxone, even if you were to administer it, it's not going to help that person in the moment. So you really have to count on 911 and the emergency medical services getting there and doing everything that they possibly can to help that person. Okay, we'll talk about ketamine. So ketamine, you might hear it called as Special K, Super K, Vitamin K, or Kit Kat. It is a drug that was originally used for seizure patients, and in some cases, it's used for helping in terms of mental health treatments. So I'm not going to say that there is no medical benefit to using ketamine, but it is still highly addictive. It's still not a drug that we should be utilizing outside of a prescription and monitored by a doctor or medical professional. So it's fairly affordable, only about $25 per dose. You can order this from the internet, and it is also very easy to hide. All right, kratom. This is one of the newer ones. Kratom is usually sold like in those little bottles of like It's an extract. There we go. It kind of looks like a 5-hour energy or something like that. So it's an herbal supplement. It can usually be bought in pill form, or like I said, as a gummy, or like one of those little bottles. So you drink it, and it is supposed to be an alternative to an opioid. So it should give you some similar feelings as you would get when you are um, doing an opioid. So it's fairly affordable, only $6 to $12 per ounce. You can buy this from the internet. You can get this from your friends. You can get it at shops. It's usually disguised as a tea or as an herbal supplement. So people think that it's not as dangerous, but you can develop an addiction to it that might lead you to trying harder drugs. And I actually had a colleague of mine who had a friend who was a flight attendant, and she was using kratom basically to help herself after she came down from a flight, to help her relax and really chill out, and essentially was exhibiting all the same signs that we would see in someone who was is doing opioids. So she looked exactly like someone who was struggling with an opioid addiction, but she was just using kratom. So we need more research on what kratom can do, but we do think that it is a new thing to have to keep an eye out for, to warn our youth about, and to know ourselves. Okay, so we'll talk about social media. So social media is the new drug dealer. You can go on Instagram, you can go on Snapchat, you can go on any of the social media apps that our youth are using today and find postings that look like this, that will state what kind of drugs they have, what is the dosage, where reach out to them so that they can figure out a time for you to go and either pick that up, or they can bring it to you. They'll tell you the pricing, and it's really it's very different from how things were back in the day, where you would have to find someone actually on the street, or know actually someone in person, and go and reach out to them. Now you can just search it on your social media, find somebody who's doing that, and they will either deliver it to you, or you guys can figure out a time that works best for you to go and get it from them. So really, that's how we're seeing the majority of drug dealing, at least with youth, going on, is specifically on social media, and then they bring those to schools. And it's a growing problem that we're noticing, and it's really related to social media, its influence over youth, and just the accessibility that you have once you're on the internet. So we're going to identify risk factors and signs of use. Okay, so this is the question for you all. What percentage of individuals who later became addicted began smoking, drinking, or using drugs prior to the age of 18? You can drop that in the chat if you know. I'm going to release the answer here. Okay, Lindsay says 30 to 50. Okay, the answer is 90%. So 90% of those with a substance use disorder started prior to the age of 18. So that's why I said earlier that it's really, really important that we delay as long as we possibly can. We let our youth know, please do not do this before your brain is fully developed, hopefully, and definitely not before the age of 21 if we can, because we see that your rates of having an addiction is directly correlated to the age at which you started using. So please know, if you take anything away from this today, is the younger you are, the more likely of a chance you will have of having an addiction. Okay, so let's talk about THC and its potency levels, which have drastically increased since the 1970s. I think that they were just growing normal flower, normal weed. People were smoking it, and it was not nearly as potent as it is today. It used to be around 15% potency. Now, today, with the technology that we have, their ability to strip out anything that is unneeded and just get the most potent portion of the THC, you're going to see some even ranging as high as 90% potency. So the potency is really what is causing an increase in psychosis in our youth. So teens who are using the high potency cannabis daily are 5 times more likely to experience psychosis. So we'll talk a little bit about psychosis um, as it relates to marijuana. There we go. So what we're seeing is more calls to poison control, more ER visits, and that is because people are experiencing such extreme psychosis that it's really scary. They don't know what to do. People around them are like, I don't know what is going on here. And it's really just because the potency of the THC itself is so much different than it used to be. And it's really causing these issues. And there was this idea that we used to have that there was no such thing as being able to form an addiction to marijuana. Um, and we've now seen that that is not completely true. So there is something that's called a cannabis use disorder, and that's when you're becoming so reliant on using cannabis and THC that it becomes a disorder. It could lead you to doing other drugs, but more importantly, it's when you feel like you can't get through the day. You have this intrinsic need to be constantly using cannabis. And that to me sounds like an addiction. So I think there was this idea that was floating around, I want to say like in the early 2000s, like, oh, you can't be addicted to weed. But we're seeing that that is not actually the case, because anything that you do in excess can become an addiction. And we're seeing some mental health challenges arise with the rising of the use of cannabis. So depression and anxiety is increasing. We're seeing that a lot in our youth who are using cannabis to try to combat some of the stuff that they're feeling when it comes to feeling depressed or anxious. But in reality, the cannabis itself is contributing to the problem. So it's just creating a loop where they can't get out of this feeling of I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling completely overwhelmed, I don't know what's going on or how to help myself. And so a lot of the times we are seeing people who are using weed to try to combat those issues, and it's just making it worse. Okay, we'll talk about 710. In the chat, let me know if you know what 710 is. Okay. Doesn't look like anybody knows what 710 is. So I am going to reveal it. 710, if you flip it upside down, is oil. So I know if you've heard about 420, which happens on April 20th, the new 420 is going to be July 10th, which is 710. Flip it upside down, it's oil, which comes from the vaping because they use a concentrate that is oil based. So you smoke that. And so keep an eye out for your youth using terms like oil or saying that they're going to hang out and party on July 10th or whatever it is, because now that is going to be a new day for them to celebrate and utilize the cannabis. So they're coming up with new things and new ways to celebrate and new ways of talking. So these are some emojis you might see used also in conjunction with oil to let you know that that's what they're planning on doing. Okay, so now we'll talk about fentanyl. So fentanyl is a synthetic opioid that is 80 to 100 times stronger than morphine. It was originally a drug used for cancer patients, and it's still used today. It does have benefits. It helps with pain management, and it helps those who are struggling. Um, but it is being utilized in a really unhealthy way in terms of street drugs. So they're creating these drugs on the streets, and they are using fentanyl because it is so potent. They're cutting that into the drugs that they're making so that it can increase the potency of their drug without actually having to utilize more expensive aspects. So if you're getting, let's say a Xanny bar, you might get some Xanax, and it's going to be a smaller portion of Xanax than would normally come in it, and the rest of it's going to be filled out with other things like fentanyl. But they're not really measuring the amount that is going into the drugs. So, as you can see in this picture here in the bottom, here with a penny. So that's a penny, and right next to it, those are some grains. So that is the amount that you would need in order to have a fatal overdose from fentanyl. So that's why it's really important that we let our youth know, like, hey, they're going to be putting this into the drugs. They're not measuring it. So there's no way for them to know, the people who are creating the drugs on the street, there's no way for them to know how much fentanyl is in it because quite frankly, they don't care enough to measure it properly. As long as they can create the product and get it sold, that is really the bottom line for them. So you might get one pill that's good and you have a great high and it was really fun and it was really awesome. And then you might take another pill from a different batch that just had a little bit too much fentanyl in it, and that will cause you to overdose and die. So what we're letting parents know is that the time for experimenting with drugs is really over, because there are times now where it's just one and done. Like, you don't get a second chance. The first pill that you take that has too much fentanyl in it is also the last pill that you ever take. So it's really important that we let our youth know that, especially if they're interested in experimenting, or you've noticed that seem to be experimenting. We just want to let them know, hey, it's very dangerous and this is why. There was a quote or a percentage on the last slide that I think is important, is to know that 95% of all youth overdose deaths involve fentanyl. And then I'm going to play this video. It's real short and quick here, but I thought it was a good one. So I'm going to play that for you.
I am Jeff Johnson. I'm a forensic pathologist, and I serve as the chief medical examiner for Maricopa County. Historically, methamphetamine has always been the most prominent drug, and that's pretty common in the West. And actually, it's still growing each year. Fentanyl, on the other hand, was exceedingly rare. In 2015, it was about 3% of cases. Since then, it's grown 4,900%. And in 2020, fentanyl overtook methamphetamine as the most common drug we detect. So now it's about 60% of our drug-related deaths involve fentanyl. In the county now, it's 6 deaths a day on average, 365 days a year, that are drug-related deaths. And of those, 60%, so 3.6 of them, are due to fentanyl. So we've been tracking not only how many deaths in the county are due to drugs, but which drugs in particular. By providing this information to our partners, public health, law enforcement, policymakers, the hope is that we can design interventions to reduce the suffering and death in our community from this.
Okay, so yeah, I thought that was a really great video that talks kind of about the struggles that we're seeing occur, specifically in Maricopa County comes to fentanyl, because it really is a rising problem. It's become so much more prevalent than we previously thought of. Like, back in 2015, about 3% of these issues were caused by fentanyl. We've seen a 4,900% increase in issues caused by fentanyl. So we really need ourselves to be aware of it. We need our youth to be aware of it, because it's a big problem. And fentanyl is highly addictive. So that's why they are creating these prescription pills with the fentanyl in it, because it's going to heighten their addiction. It's cheap for them to make. It's super cheap for them to create fentanyl, in their garage, in their basement, or wherever it is that they're creating it. Put it into the prescription pill, mix it together so that they are getting more bang for their buck. They're creating more drugs with less of the actual prescription drug. So it's important to also note that our youth are not specifically seeking out fentanyl. So nobody's like, oh yeah, let me get some fentanyl. Really, what they're getting is other pills. They're looking for, Xanax. They're looking for cocaine. They're looking for other drugs, and they are cutting fentanyl in it to cut their costs. So just know that like it's not an issue so much of telling your child don't do fentanyl. It's telling them don't try to purchase any sort of pills off the streets. Don't do any prescription pills that were not prescribed to you. And of course, don't abuse prescription pills. So our youth don't know that they're purchasing fentanyl, and it's really having quite a negative effect on their ability to survive these encounters that they're having with it. This is some emojis that you might see used. Oh, sorry, Lindsay, just saw your message here. Yes, this is being recorded, and we're going to send it out to everyone later. So sorry, this is just a quick little slide here that goes over some of the codes that you might see our youth using when they're talking about using drugs with one another. They're texting or they're on social media or whatever it is. You can definitely look and see that there are some sneaky ways that they might be talking about it with one another, and you just want to make sure that you know so that you're not in the dark when it comes to understanding what they're saying and what they're doing. Okay, so let's at some signs and symptoms of drug use. So red water, your glassy eyes, change in the pupil size, slurred speech, their moods might be up or down, they're isolating themselves away from family or from friends. You might notice a drop in their grades, a change in their eating or sleeping patterns, a loss in previous interest or hobbies, and change in their peer groups, paraphernalia, or lost money or possession. So it's really important that you kind of have a baseline of where your youth is at, because some of these things could just be normal things that are happening in their lives. Sometimes the school is hard and you're not able to keep up as well as you were before, so you might notice a drop in grades. But just noticing whether or not that's a normal thing that's coming from normal parts of their lives and aspects of their lives as they're growing up as a teen, and what is caused by them using substances and having their lives be affected in that way. Same goes with change in their eating and sleeping habits. So it always warrants a conversation when you notice something very extreme happening, like they're overeating or they're undereating or they're not sleeping at all or they're sleeping too much. You can definitely have a conversation with them about that. Hey, I've noticed you're not eating as much as you used to. What's going on? And they could say, oh, I've just been trying to lose weight. And then you can have a conversation about how do we healthily lose weight. Or, you'll notice in the way that they respond whether or not it's something that needs to be addressed by you. Okay, let's talk about some risk factors. So trauma and abuse is a big risk factor. Mental health challenges, so they're struggling with depression or anxiety, or they might have bipolar or some issue like that, and the way that they want to help themselves feel better is to use a substance. But what they can really do is find a professional who can give some help there. So a counselor, a therapist, a peer support specialist, possibly even getting on some antidepressants or whatever prescription they might need to be on that will help stabilize those chemicals in their brains that are help making them feel these challenges. Another risk factor would be family history of substance use, as well as favorable attitudes towards substances. So we talked about way earlier in the beginning of the presentation that 71% of youth don't use substances because of parental disapproval. So we just really got to make it clear how we feel about that. And so we don't want to show any favorable attitudes towards substances, especially not when we're talking about it with youth. Lack of family involvement and lack of connection, those are really important things. I think those are probably the most important things that we can do, is make sure that we are having family dinners, we're taking time to just hang out, talk as a family, find something that we can do, find a family hobby, and just making sure that they feel connected. Because once you start to lose that feeling of connection and involvement, that's when you're going to start reaching out for other things, especially when you're a youth and you don't exactly know how to navigate those issues. All you know is that you're feeling lonely, and hitting your vape makes you feel better. So definitely have conversations, make sure that you're open and honest about it, um, and that will reduce the risk factors. So we'll talk a little bit about protective factors. So, like I said, family engagement, connection to a positive, caring adult. So, definitely make sure that you put yourselves in their lives as someone that they can trust, that they know loves them, cares about them, wants what's best for them, and will be there for them. Parental disapproval, monitoring behaviors in social media. So, making sure that there's nothing going on in their lives that you don't know about. Obviously, they do need to have their privacy. We want to respect that, but you do also just need to keep tabs on what they're going on. Like I said earlier, establish a baseline so that you know when something seems to be different from their established baseline. School involvement and spirituality. So making sure that they feel that they have connection to their school, to their peers, to their friends, and then spirituality doesn't necessarily have to be religion, but we do know that belief in something bigger than yourself can really help, especially if a youth is feeling lost. Okay, so some strategies that we can use. Start early. It's never too early or too late to model healthy behaviors. Create a foundation of sharing and connection, and then look for risk factors and respond quickly and effectively. Like it says, it is quite literally never, never too early to start. And it's also never too late to start. You might think, oh, well, my teen's already, 17. I missed the boat there. No, you didn't. You can still talk about it with them now. Know the facts. So ask questions about their friend groups, talk to their school for resources, and then stay informed. You can follow Not My Kid. We have information on our Instagram, on our Facebook, and also on our website. So if you want to stay up to date on what's going on, especially when it comes to youth, when it comes to substances, and when it comes to mental health trends, please know the facts, and know where you can turn and what the resources are. Understanding the teen brain. We know it's really important that their brain develops in the healthiest way possible, and that we do anything that we can to make sure that that is the case. Understanding that their brain isn't fully developed until they're 25 years old. So just when we know, we can adjust the way that we approach them, especially when it comes to the lessons that we want to teach them, how we plan to educate them, and how we let them know the resources that we know. Setting clear and firm expectations. So taking a health and not a punitive approach. So it's not about punishment. It's about, I want you to be healthy. I want you to be happy, and making sure that at the core of all your conversations that you have with them when it comes to either mental health challenges or substance use, that is the core of it, that it's not to make them feel bad. It's not to punish them or to be negative, that really it's because you want the best possible outcome for them. Keep communication lines open. So make sure they know you are there, even if they've made an unhealthy choice. You really have to let them know that they can trust you to talk to you and communicate openly and honestly with you, even if they've done something that you don't condone. You want them to be able to tell you that, hey, mom, this weekend, I did something that I don't think you'll approve of, but I want to talk to you about it because it was this negative experience, or maybe it'll be a positive experience, and you can just talk through that with them. You really want to create a non-judgmental space where they're able to share. Find ways to connect. So not every conversation has to be about business. It doesn't have to be about chores. homework, school stuff, sports stuff. Like, let some conversations just be like, hey, what's your favorite movie? Or who's your favorite actor? Or what's your favorite song? Why? And just really getting to connect with them on that level that is deeper than just stuff always being about business. Like, your kid wants to know that you care about every single part of them, every aspect of them. And it includes those things. What's your favorite color? What's your least favorite thing to do? Just having conversations like that are more fun, and let them know that you're someone that they can trust. And definitely share words of encouragement and appreciation. Everyone everywhere wants to feel appreciated and encouraged, and wants to know when they're doing a good job. So please tell them that. Say, hey, I noticed you got up 5 minutes earlier today and brushed your teeth, and you weren't late for school. That's really awesome, and I'm really proud of you. Just making sure that when they are doing things, especially things that you've asked them to do, that you acknowledge that they've done that, because it really does go a long way. Creating a safety plan. So help them practice what to do before they're offered substances, and create a code word to get out of risky situations. Also, talk to them about the Good Samaritan Law. So the Good Samaritan Law is a law that's in place in Arizona that says if you were to help someone that is experiencing an overdose, and you've also been, partaking in substances, that you're not going to be held legally accountable or experience any sort of jail or anything like that because you helped them. So it protects people. We want people to know, please get people the help they need, and don't run away because you're scared you're going to get in trouble. There is a law that protects you. Model desired behaviors. Remember, they are watching more than they are listening. So you want to be human and demonstrate healthy coping mechanisms and communication skills. And sorry, I'm kind of going quickly through these last ones here because I want to get wrapped up and don't want to take anyone's time more than you've already become. And I appreciate you being here. So monitor and keep track. Definitely make sure that this comes from a place of love and care. So this is mostly in terms of social media, but just in their life in general. Just make sure that they know that you are monitoring them, not because you don't trust them or you don't want them to have privacy, you don't want them to, be their own person, but it's because you're their mom or you're their dad, and you really, really care about them as a person, and you want them to be okay. Positive reinforcement, like I talked about earlier, encouragement and appreciation. So give positive feedback and recognize resilience. All right. So when we want to talk to our youth, what we need to know is we need to first regulate ourselves, then we relate to them, and then we respond. So if we're angry, we're super dysregulated, we need to first calm ourselves down, so that they can understand what we're saying. These are some reading materials. Like I said, this this presentation is being recorded. We will send it out that way. So you'll be able to pause on this screen if you want to look at any of these reading materials we recommend. This is if you ever need help finding treatment. You can go to findtreatment.samhsa.gov, or you can go to notmykid.com, fill out a referral form. We will help you in any way that we can. If we're not the best fit for you in terms of our behavioral health services, we have a family navigation person who will make sure that you find the right person. These are some of our programs. We do have peer mentorship as well as behavioral health services. We come out and we do our prevention education, so presentations just like this in the community as well. So if you're interested in learning anything about those, please, you can either reach out to me at dflowers@notmykid.org, or you can just stop on our website. And I will end it there. Thank you everyone for coming. I really appreciate you being here. And if you do have any questions, you can drop those in the chat. Otherwise, I will talk to you all later. All right, looks like there's no questions. All right, have a great day.